Hello, conscious agents of Reality Sandwich. Kyle here, back with another Share Your Experience interview with the amazing Alexandra Plesner. Thank you for joining me today, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. Excited to be here.
Of course, I was super intrigued, by your background and your experience with psychedelics. So I'd love for you, to introduce yourself briefly to our audience and what you do in the space.
Sure. I am relatively new to the space. I think I entered around 21, and I built an psilocybin educational platform called Psilocybin San Francisco over the past 2 years. And I also started another project called Psychedelics Design, where I explore the intersection of psychedelics and design, what psychedelics can do for design and what design can do for psychedelics. And that stems from the fact that I am a designer and I've worked in agencies and for clients all of my life. And so I guess the psychedelic industry was interesting to me for many reasons. And that's just my way of exploring the psychedelic space, really. Yeah.
Beautiful. When you say psychedelic design, do you mean architecture, packaging, fashion? How do you define that term and what psychedelic designs are you creating and seeing out there?
For me, design is more than just aesthetics. So I'm talking a lot about, I'm a strategic designer. So I'm talking a lot about design as a strategic tool, in addition to aesthetics. When I'm talking about design in psychedelics, it's everything that we create and everything is designed. So I'm speaking to and I'm working with architects, with visual designers, with UX designers, interaction designers, interior designers, even fashion. So for me, it design is more than one thing, and it really reflects in the conversations I'm having, the interviews I'm having, and also the event I'm organizing and the event series I'm organizing. But it's also a lot about, as designers, if we are using psychedelics, how does it affect our creative process? I'm very interested in learning more about this and having more conversations along those lines.
Did you use plant medicine as part of your creative journey? How did you come up with the organizations you wanted to start and what made you shift from working in the agency world to now the projects you've created?
Wow, big question. Where do I start? I was Psychedelics design is easy. I simply felt inspired to do it, and I sometimes feel it's a good enough reason. It's maybe even the best reason when you make something not with a specific outcome, when it's not starting because you want to make money or because you want to do whatever. So I was in San Francisco. I just felt the closest to magic mushrooms, like psilocybin containing mushrooms specifically, and I met my partner for a conversation on Instagram, and we just really hit it off. We both wanted to, dip our toes into the psychedelic space. We both wanted to do a real world project. We both wanted to do an educational platform, and we both were most eager on psilocybin. And so we just decided to focus on psilocybin. And for me, it was very important to think outside the psychedelic space. So who are the people that are intrigued about psychedelics as an idea, and psilocybin as an idea, and how can we reach those? How can we help them educate themselves, and how can we help that education? How can we spread the word and about the compound, what it can do, what it can't do, about risk and harm reduction, and just make that into a beautiful, accessible, and a democratic platform. And yeah, so that's that about agency life. Well, I've been in agencies all my life, but when the pandemic hit, I stopped my full-time job at my last agency and I continued freelancing for them, and I got more and more freelance clients on the side. And frankly, as much as I really miss at some occasions to just be in a room with a bunch of designers where we don't have to translate what we feel and say and think because we all speak the same language. And also, of course, the freedom of an agency, I now value even more so, that I'm out of it. but I also value the freedom of choosing your clients and working whenever you want and not having to go into the same office every day, even though the office might be amazing, you know. And I was lucky that the offices I worked in have been incredible, inspiring. I met the most amazing people, and also the studios have been freaking awesome. So yeah, it's of course you can't compare it, but yeah.
So I'm curious, what really inspired you to get into the educating yourself about psilocybin, magic mushrooms, psychedelics. You've mentioned previously to me, you're from Austria. So what was that cultural shift like coming to the United
Ah,
States and being exposed to the culture? And did you grow up? Were your parents hippies? Did they introduce you to cannabis or magic mushrooms? How did you discover the plant medicine?
yeah, most definitely not. Like my in terms of my parents, I grew up in a in fact, I'm right here right now in Austria with my family over the summer. And in fact, I grew up in a very small town in the Austrian Alps, and I grew up in a very traditional family as well. Even things like not being the person allowed to drive cars much, because I'm the girl. Like if you think about that cultural perspective, my family is largely with Italian heritage, and that's how I grew up with. We don't do drugs, we don't drink. Like as a woman especially, I was raised not to drink beyond a certain limit, and so I think I was even just drunk once in my life. So it's like totally different. In fact, I'm not living in the US. I'm based in the UK. I'm based in London since what 2010 when I went there to study. I did my first master's at Central St. Martin's there, and in arts, by the way. So it's like so different. But I've not been taking any substances ever in my life for the longest period of my life, simply because I'm very aware of my body being fragile. I always had like a weaker immune system, so I was not up for experimentations. But also, I unfortunately have been given, I don't know if how you see that in like really, but a rape drug where somebody put those drops into my drink, and I was really lucky that a friend took care of me that day because it could have gone the complete other way. And so that experience really made me scared of trying any psychedelics as well. How I got interested in psychedelics was because I've read, and especially psilocybin, because my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and I was living with her for a year when I was doing my bachelor in fashion in Munich, and I felt a change of in her and of her, and it was very difficult for my family and especially for my mother to believe it and to look at it and get out of denial and working together. And my grandmother just she was the closest and dearest person to me. Like I'm a creative soul. I'm an artist. I'm artist, I guess, at soul, and she always was able to work with me, to take me the way I am and to encourage me to be the way I am. So to one day come back from university and have her sit me down and tell me about Alexandra has been in like I don't know overwhelming. I would say at best, and I really wanted to learn at that moment immediately about what is Alzheimer's, what is out there, how can we help her. She refused to take most medication,
Mhm.
and I learned about psilocybin and how it affects the brain. And like, I mean, I say I learned, I mean, a little bit. I informed myself about that. I didn't study it. Like, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a neuroscientist, which I kind of wish I would. It's super fascinating. And that was really the reason why I was interested in learning more about it. And where I also felt it's such a shame that it's so hard to discover information about that, especially in my culture. It's just not a thing, and if it's a thing, it's a bad thing, and I feel through my artist side I have a certain naivete when it comes to exploring. I have like big curiosity, and so I was very open to learning everything there is. Like I still am. Like I'm learning every day, and it's been an incredible journey. But what I underestimated was what you pointed out: how culture here in Austria and Central, like Europe, perceives me working with psychedelics and what their assumptions are versus how people I know and know me of in the UK or in the US, how they perceive it. It feels like when I was talking to people in San Francisco, I was like in a cafe and I had open conversations with people about that I've never met. And it even feels at times like it seems to be like a badge of honor
Hmm.
to do any psychedelics and to be somehow affiliated with that space. Versus I also have people in Europe that withdraw from me as a person simply by the fact that you can read on my LinkedIn that I'm working with psychedelics. And just this a small anecdote is like I have tattoos, and in Austria it was even like the assumption, like people think I smoke simply because I have tattoos, so I fall into a certain category. Like it's less or so these days, but a few years ago, it just was even, yeah, it was weird for people. And so I'm trying to navigate that, and also having conversations with my family about that. I'm here to stay in that space. It's like it was not just a phase. Yeah, long story. Sorry.
That's wonderful. It's not just a phase. It's a whole new movement we're spearheading here.
Yeah, it's nice to see that my mother is opening up to the idea of uh, even just adaptogens, because even lion's mane feels scary because it's the thought of what does it really do with me? Am I hallucinating? Am I going to stay in that sphere? There's a lot of anxiety with losing control and
Hmm.
exploring the unknown, and also there's a lot of anxiety in change, and the possible change that happens, and the shifts that we read about in general media.
Beautiful. So, walk me through your first exploration with psilocybin. What was that experience like? How did you, really, really dive right in?
Yeah, so fun fact, me starting a psilocybin startup with my colleague is that I never took psilocybin before I started working on our brand positioning and branding and designing the icon. And I found myself in a space where I was drawing a lot of mushrooms and icons to figure out, what feels good for us, and to come up with our cute icon in the end. And I said to her, "You look, I feel like I can't really go into building an educational platform about psilocybin without having had a psilocybin experience." And so we met in May and we launched in July. And in June, I had my first psilocybin trip. And that was only June 2022. And I know I also have to face like assumptions, critiques, and accusations, even that I have not had a 10-year experience with magic mushrooms, and here I am in the industry, and basically who I am being here and who I am talking about this. That's why I'm also saying I'm not an educator in this space, because I am educating myself at the moment. Maybe in 10 years I can tell, or 20 years I can tell people about how to use the substance. But I never wanted to try out any psychedelic in a party atmosphere
Hmm.
or in a city, because I know I'm very sensitive. So I know I'm hypersensitive to sound, to noise, like in general, to smell, to light. And so learning about psilocybin, I thought, right, if my anxiety or if my senses even are amplified, I don't want that. I don't want to deal with it. So I was lucky that one of a friend that I know for 20 years and her boyfriend are working with plant medicine. And I'm, of course, not going to disclose their names, but they offered me to do the psilocybin trip with them. It was absolutely beautiful. It was in Germany, in the woods, close to a river, and it was unexpected. What I thought so well prepared. um, I spent there already 2 weeks, um, from sauna to ice bath to daily meditation to I ate vegan. I was vegetarian for a while. Every now and then, I still was eating meat, or still am eating meat. I'm like exploring those lines, but that psilocybin also shifted that. But effectively, it was me walking into the woods with 3.5 to 4 grams of mushrooms, dried gold teacher, that grew there. So I feel also that since mushrooms grow where I am, it feels like a more natural, since they are everywhere on this planet. Then also the fact that they grew the mushrooms and they grew in the woods that I know felt very, I don't know, grounding and important somewhat. And like she and him asked me to just walk into the woods and eat the mushroom as I feel. And we did a beautiful ceremony with sage, and there was no music, there was no external anything, there was no guidance. And I just sat there and let it unfold. And I think, I had like another experience later with music, which was so different. It was guided, and here nature was the music, and nature was the guide. I think that's as much as I can say for a start. I don't know if you have like more questions, but it was just incredible for me to have all the senses just heightened. I had like one very like profound, like several very profound insights, and but they all felt very familiar. But one, growing up being creative was always a negative. It was always like, yeah, Alex is creative because the way I am, I do things differently, I guess, than what our culture teaches us, or what society teaches us, or my culture teaches me to what it means to be a good adult and to be a good fit for this reality and for our culture. And I felt very much at peace. I felt like I dipped in and out of the experience weirdly. At one point, I was just completely out there and completely lost, I would say, in a different world. And it was simply a beautiful journey, and I'm very grateful. I knew I had a moment where I knew and felt that I could go down a bit of a darker route,
Mhm.
but my friends helped me breathe through it and breathe out of it. And we had this conversation about, there's something else I could explore, but there's also no need. And that letting go of, you need to do the hard way, was also a good learning, and for me in general. And yeah, like what else I can say to that is, um, doing like taking a psilocybin dose in nature with people that you trust, for me was just the only way to have my first experience, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 grams could be a pretty heavy dose for somebody's first time. What did you were you getting visuals? What was some of the downloads that you were getting as you traversed the forests of Germany?
Yeah, I remember it really vividly, which I think is surprising because my memory is actually sometimes quite bad, and which annoys the hell out of me. But that I still find interesting, that I remember every second, the visuals of like all of it. And um, like my memory is usually sometimes really bad. It's so bizarre, for me. Colors I've seen, so it started for me. Firstly, really interesting. We sat at the river, and the sun was going down, so I took it in the late afternoon, and was tripping through the sun, like the sun going down, and the evening and the night. And yeah, maybe it was a bit high, of a dose, but it also felt right. And I just remember that I'm really scared of spiders. And I remember somebody telling me that if you really focus on that, on your fear of spiders, this is where you might be ending up. You know, like that person said, you might be just in your pond with spiders for 5 hours or 6, 7, 8 hours. And I remembered that in that moment, and I've remembered I suddenly felt, oh shit, I'm sorry, my my language. I'm like, I'm not sure if I like this. I'm like, I had this moment where I'm like, I'm. It feels familiar to when I felt that drug when I was drugged in at that private party. I felt that moment where it was like I realized consciousness shifting, reality shifting, and I was like, I don't want to go into the dark place there was back then. And that was very helpful to have a guide there and to help me just let go of that fear. And that was then also the second step was for me then to look at these spiders, and I suddenly started to sympathize with them. I was like, oh, look at them enjoying the sunshine. It's such a weird thing that also months after and even to that day, I'm not that scared of spiders anymore. Months after that experience, for the next, like, would say 2, 3, 4 months, like, I was fine with spiders. I would not be like, cuddling up. I was just like, you're here, I'm here, everything is fine. Now, I keep a bigger distance again. The visual I've seen was just like on set, like everything felt like it felt like I was able to see without glasses. I was able to see sharp without glasses.
Mhm.
So I remember that, and I saw only like yellow and pink light for a while, and how I from 1 second to the next I was really in it, and I just couldn't see anything anymore. I saw only pink and yellow light, and I remember I really cried. I cried for ages, and my friend asked me what's going on, and I said, like, I'm feeling all the pain of the world, but it doesn't hurt. But effectively, I just am a person that is withholding tears. And I feel like it was such a relief for my body and my system to be able to cry so many tears that I was holding back. And looking back, that was really that moment. And after this, it was only, um, it felt like California sunset light all the time. And I remember that because I dipped in and out of that experience. I don't know why, but my friends told me it felt like a child going to play at the playground and checking back with the parents every now and then to be like, everything is still okay, right? I'm still safe. You're still there. And then I went out, told them a little bit of what I saw, and then I dipped back in. And first, I did not see much geometric forms. I can't tell you if it's been like 2 hours in or 3 hours in or 30 minutes in because I have no idea of time. Like, I listened to a song later on that night as I was coming down, and it felt I listened to the song for 30 years. But it's definitely not been 30 years. But yeah. And then I've just seen, like, I walked through the woods, and I was leaning against a tree, something that a friend encouraged me. I was still starting at the beginning of the experience. And I felt like I'm falling into nature and into the tree. And it was an insight of me that I am really part of nature. I don't need to be worried about nature. Nature allows us to exist and coexist in a way. Um, that was really, really profound. And for me, the second thing was that I had eating disorders from the age of 12 until like 27, 28. And then every now and then I was still dipping in. And I never felt okay with my body. And it was the first time in my life that I felt okay with myself. And for whoever can like hears that and it can resonate, that's why I'm now also so convinced in regards to psychedelics, especially psilocybin, and when it comes to eating disorders, for many reasons. And the feeling of okay is and enough is and safe within nature is one of the reasons. And then also, I don't know, assume one of many reasons why it's getting really deep here is confession time is I was sexually abused as a child, and from that moment I was also often afraid of men. And there was one guy in the group I spent the time with that entered this space or that river space. And I know that he has been abusive to women, and we had conversations somewhat organically in preparation of my trip. And he came, and I really was like, I don't know what happens because you might trigger me, but I've made peace with everything that happened in the moment, because I said, like, it's totally fine that you're here. I recognize and realize what happened to me, and it's not being me. As a child, I carried that shame and I carried that guilt for something that I didn't do. Like, and even I just forgave myself and the world that happened. I think this is something I really did not expect, and I'm still feeling at peace, and I have not felt at peace with that topic my entire life. And so that was one one psilocybin trip, and of course I had therapy before, and of course I had therapy and after. I don't know if I would have been where I was without it. I doubt it, but that, like, I'm so grateful for this. And yeah, of course, the colors are beautiful, loved it, but I have such high respect of the medicine that I would not want to just go back in there to see some colors.
And
Yeah.
that's why we do call it medicine. It is powerful, and it is healing, and it's truly beneficial if everybody could get on board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
sounds like a really beautiful first experience. A lot of healing, a lot of things to reflect on. What was that post experience like? So you got out of there. You're coming back to your creative project and processing what you downloaded. How did you take that and now funnel it into your experience and work that you were doing?
um First, what I would like to mention is that for me, coming back into normal life was very hard.
Hmm.
I had a very hard time because I felt so comfortable being that curious, childlike entity in my little bubble, psychedelic bubble, that for me it was very hard to be back into normal world. And I think I learned I need a little bit more breathing space between an intense trip and reality and going back
Hmm.
into everyday's life.
Hmm.
One thing was, for example, I did not know what to eat anymore. Like, I could not touch on any animal products whatsoever, and I have not been vegan, so I really had a hard time figuring out. Again, eating my animal product again, but also with a whole different way of thinking.
Hmm.
But then maybe I don't know. I always consumed animal products with massive respect. I would say. Then just like for how to integrate it into work, I realized more of the importance of educating or trying to help and educate people that are also first time users and just curious about how it actually feels like, maybe, but also how to prepare for it, how to integrate. Integration for me after this was such a important topic. And I feel this. I feel you have this window of opportunity, and if you don't use it wisely, I think it's a little bit of a waste. Maybe, maybe it's hard to say that, but I'm thinking you have this shift, and you could change some of your behavioral patterns. But I feel strongly if you go back into the same environment, um, maybe old patterns might even be more reinforced because you're more open and more vulnerable and perceptive to, like, it feels like some filter left and it just goes through like a child. So especially the first 3 to 5 days or what afterwards, like up to a week, I think I really struggled, and I'm very, very grateful. I had conversations with my partner Melika from Psilocybin San Francisco, who was very experienced, and other people in my life. Like, I spoke with Jessica Lagarde from Women on Psychedelics. Shout out to Jess. She is incredible, and she really, really helped me with figuring out some rituals and ways to reintegrate into existing in the reality that I have to exist in, you know. And yeah, also learning, yeah, I actually just to learn more about the medicine moving forward. I was just like much more interested, and also um, my initial respect of plant medicine was just reinforced. I feel like there are these little mushrooms that are so little and cute, and you don't even think about that power, and like the idea that they bruise when they are hurt. Like the color blue is like they bruise when you cut them. And it's I just have such a, I don't know, a love for them in a way. I don't know, and so I feel also for people, go in there and respect the medicine that somewhat nature is giving us humans, and to discover and rediscover now.
Beautifully put. So now, from this post experience, I'm curious, as you were working on the psychedelic design project and psilocybin SF, what did you take away from that experience, and what were some of the design epiphanies that came to you, and how did you feel now, starting this event series and launching the organization from your post mushroom download?
Yeah, so the organization was already like started, but it was just very clear that it just made sense to me to do that. But yeah, by the way, I'm like not longer affiliated with Psilocybin San Francisco. I'm now moving forward also with psychedelics design. And with psychedelics design, for me, it's to really explore more how can psychedelics help us design better futures. Because as designers, we often think about how do I design better futures. It's like such a jargon and loaded phrase as well. And I'm thinking, okay, whenever I designed a product, I was always thinking, about, does this need to be plastic? Can this be another material? And like, if it needs to be plastic, what plastic? And like, when I designed our website, for example, both like Psilocybin San Francisco and when and psychedelics design, I was like looking into what does it mean? Like, is there a green hosted website, like web space? What does it mean to have a green hosted web space? How can I create content that is maybe more energy efficient? It's like what does dark mode do to energy efficiency? And I feel like maybe this nature, like this feeling to be more nature related and close to nature and to oneself and to the others around us, might help us to be more empathic. And I was actually thinking along those lines, and I was just thinking, like um, maybe we can apply some of the thinking and ideas of a psychedelic experience, especially with mushrooms, into
Mhm.
our everyday life as designers. Like I was thinking maybe we can integrate like sort of design principles from psychedelic experiences. Like the that idea of being connected to your intuition, the idea of like interconnectedness, um, the the fact that like psychedelics transform and foster growth, maybe creative growth. um, I see psychedelics as agents of change in many ways, and but that can go both ways. So I'm very aware of, thinking, okay, if psychedelics are known as non-specific amplifiers, but also, how would they then affect negative traits of humans? Like, are they going to amplify that? It's like where can we learn what can we do with it? But I'm thinking, if psychedelics are viewed as tools to unlock new perspectives and for us to reconnect with our creativity that's inherent, and everybody is creative in my way. Some might unlearn it more, some unlearn it less. Can they help us really to create with nature and in synergy with nature more in the future? But then also, of course, I'm thinking as a designer, how can I support the psychedelic industry? And that was my initial thinking, is like, also as a creative and as a designer, how can I support the space where I believe in so much? You know, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a scientist at all. I'm not a scientific researcher. I'm a design researcher. And I found myself earlier, like, before I started my journey in psychedelics, in a space where I'm like, who am I? You know, like, what can I contribute as a creative? You know, a pretty logo? So what? You know? But I think I learned about that is what I can do. You know, like, I'm a creative, I'm a designer. I can work on design strategy. I can work on design research. I can do brand positionings, and I can help with like a nice logo that actually communicates the message. You know, I can help startups and non for profits by just giving them a look and a platform for sharing their voice, and maybe that's what I can do, and so I do what I can. Yeah.
Beautiful, and we all appreciate the work that you're doing. What's
Thank
been
you.
inspiring to you recently about your upcoming symposium and events, and dive into, what have you learned from other people that you've been chatting and getting to speak about psychedelic design and some of the philosophies with that.
I'm learning so much. I was very scared of launching my own podcast. Sorry for that. And I then decided I'm just going to share some of the conversations that I'm having with, especially creatives that are interested in psychedelics, or creatives within the psychedelic space, simply because it inspired me. And so I just hope it inspires others as well. So I'm doing more of the podcast series, and every conversation, I like, as Laura Dawn put it, so shout out to her, gets me closer to framing, what I'm trying to do as well, and
Mhm.
learning more. And I'm so grateful for everybody who makes time for me, and shares their knowledge, perspectives, and has conversations with me. And I partnered up with Floris from Blossom and Blossom Analytics, incredible platform that I used, by the way, for my second master to find research studies, because you can filter and search for certain keywords. Um, and we decided we just gonna host an event at the intersection of psychedelics design. And the initial idea was to have psychonauts talk about, their experience, and designers to talk about their experience. And I have found so many incredible people to join me there, and to share their perspectives, share their journeys. And the last event was in April, and I published already some of the replays, but you can also find them on the website psychedelics.design. And the new event in July is again at the intersection of psychedelics and design, and there will be conversations from Dennis Walker, mycopreneur, who will be talking about cultural. Like, for me, it's like psychedelics has a lot to do with culture, and system change has a lot to do with cultures and where we come from. And so he's really talking about culture, perception, and the media's influence. And then Dr. Grace Blessed, hopefully, I'm connected with for a long time, and I donated a logo to her startup, Hysterica, I think it's already a couple of years ago. She will also talk about design versus science. What can design learn from science? What can science learn from design? Which is a conversation that I have many times with her. And I'm honored to have Joe Moore from Psychedelics Today. His talk is, if I remember right, the Great Reconnector. Um, and he talks about how we can design our way back together with psychedelics. And, that's incredible. But also, I thought it would be good to have more practical, like, that's very philosophical, and I love that. But I also thought it's good to have some more practical things that help psychedelic startup industry to gain knowledge. So last time, Carly Dutch Green from Studio Delic and I gave a presentation on branding and brand systems, and visual trends within the psychedelic industry, hoping for people to find inspiration. And they can always reach out to us when they have questions in terms of branding and design. And this time, I'm so excited because I have Peter Raitano. I don't know if I pronounce his name right. He's the founder of Guella and Mocho, and Ali Shaper from Supermash. And they will talk about how to create a consumer facing product fit for a psychedelic future, and with a regenerative future in mind. And I'm excited because they both are going to share a keynote, and I love that they do that because they are seemingly competitors in the space, but yet their brands are on so opposite scales of how they look like visually. So I love bringing together people. And at the end, I'm also about to confirm like a new guest. And at the end, we all jump into a panel, and every one of the speakers who would love to can share their perspectives. And it's a very open conversation. And I prefer conversations that way because it happens organic. And it's like, as a child, I often thought, oh my God, think about it. How cool must it be if you walk into the Central Café Central in Vienna, and you happen to sit at the table next to Klimt, and you hear Klimt talk about basically anything and everything. And so for me, events like this, I'm just grateful and happy to be there, hear that person talk about something, because there might be this one sentence that really help you forward and that really inspires change. Yeah.
Beautiful. In your opinion, what is good design versus bad design, and what products have been exciting to you in the psychedelic space you've seen emerging?
Wow. You put me on the spot here. I don't think so. Good design. Good design for me is intelligence and beauty and functionality. And I do have to confess, and I hear, if some of my friends hear that, some typography things really make me cringe. it's it's literally painful for me to sometimes, like, it's visual stuff sometimes is painful. I don't know, it sounds so stupid and arrogant potentially, but it's somehow like grammar mistakes are paining a good writer sometimes to read, or spelling mistakes or comma mistakes. And for any designer who is like an aesthetic like person and a visual person, this might be painful. And so when I see beautiful typesetting and alignments with visuals, it just makes me happy on a very superficial level. Um, Designs that I love in the industry, I love seeing that over the just along the past year, so much is happening in terms of getting outside of the psychedelic bubble, learning how to, for companies that I follow, learning how to be more attractive also and resonate and tell your stories to an audience that might not be so familiar with psychedelics yet, and also reach an audience that is outside of that space. Brands that I love that are really standing out. I mean, Reality Sandwich, just as an example, your brand is really standing out of it. I made a color wheel that you can also see on the website and on Substack. I made a color wheel where I accumulated logos and web page landing pages from all sorts of companies in the psychedelic space. So I had like a psychedelic ecosystem list. It's just an Excel spreadsheet that I made publicly available, but I also made a Figma board for the media companies, the product companies, and like what product companies. And so I fell in love immediately with Mojo, for example.
Hmm.
Stunning design. Love the Beckley Retreat logo, and how it translates, and their consistency from the website to social channels to printouts. Supermush in its own really strong brand. Really talks about, like, it's, you look at it and it's California. It's like LA, Venice Beach lifestyle, and it feels like it. And like they just come like to the top of my mind. And yeah, I mean, like, another one I really love is Tricycle Day. Shout out to you, Henry. I don't know if you listen to this, but he's like the entire like idea, the entire newsletter is one of my favorite ones. It's like trailblazing, and the logo is standing out. It's like a face, it's like as an icon, and although it seems complex, it isn't. And when you look at it, it's Tricycle Day. And I think this is just such a big achievement for any brand. When you look at the logo and the icon, you think about the brand. And it's incredible that he achieved that. And it's rare. And like with Supermush, I love their retro perspective. Also, Alice, for example, always like they also have like a certain brand consistency. Yawn was one of the first brands that I found in the space, and loved their design work as well. So yeah, I mean, I buy a book by the cover. I'm like that. The amount of products I bought just because I like the packaging is it's ridiculous, but yeah, it's like a designer thing, I guess. Yeah. And I love. I'm currently volunteering also for Sendo, but in a different way. So I'm grateful that I'm able to help them. Hopefully, even more so moving forward with the visual aspects of their brand and their sit course, and how it translates. I think it's the most beautiful thing is to see the consistency. As a designer, it's always hard when you go in there, and you create beautiful branding, and then 3 months later, after you applied it and it launched, it starts to fall apart because big corporations sometimes have so many different departments, they don't talk with each other, especially in education, in educational sectors, um, or like museums and so on and so forth. So yeah, outside of the space, like there are so many other more like examples, but I would encourage people to also look outside of the space and to look outside of the classic geometric forms and crazy psychedelic visuals. But then also, why not really, really go for it? It depends, like a logo is just like the tip of the iceberg, or how a
Hmm.
colleague from Moving Brand said, it's like it's a fruiting body, but there's so much else going on. Yeah.
There's the mycelium network underneath.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to know who you want to be as a brand, and your product and your customer, and then you can think about how do I want to look like.
Well, excellent. Where can people check out your guides and your spreadsheets? Where can people follow you and get in touch? When is the upcoming event? And when are we throwing the Austrian Mushroom Festival?
Yeah. Yeah, so in terms of mushroom, I'm working on something. I'm going to for sure share it on my Instagram, and psychedelics design. So the website is like www, and I'm saying that because then it's psychedelics.design, and so psychedelics with an S in the end. Dot design. You basically can find everything on there, and then it takes you to different places. It takes you to the Substack. It takes you to the Instagram. It takes you to the podcast, which is on Substack and on Spotify. The event is on July 11th, and it's going to be online. And I hope it's affordable for everyone. If not, I'm always happy to just have people join in. For me, this is really to share my love for what I'm doing, and like we will see what comes out of it. And also shout out to everybody who would love to collaborate, support, do something together, from writing articles to designing something to doing a speculative design project. For anybody who needs help in branding or design, or just have a conversation, I'm always happy to make time.
Alexandra, I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my second podcast, I guess, and yeah, it's been really nice to talk to you as always, Kyle. Thanks for asking me so many questions. I hope you got something out of it.